Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. For those new here, my name's Henry. I'm a number cruncher by day and a street and travel photography enthusiast by night. Today I'd like to dive into this video which will talk about two lenses which define a new category of zoom lenses. Firstly, what I featured on the channel before, this is the Tamron 20-40 f2.8 zoom for Sony E-mount, and this is a new edition, the Sony 24-50 f2.8 zoom, obviously by Sony. These lenses don't fit the traditional focal length for zoom lenses on full frame cameras, yet they've gained a following because they offer something different. So let's explore if this could be part of your workflow. So let's break down the differences between this lens and this lens and see which one might be a better fit for you if you're considering these focal ranges, and which one is right for me because I'm only going to be keeping one of them. Quick disclaimer here, all of the lenses and camera gear that I'm talking about in this video have been purchased by me. There is a partially sponsored segment in the middle, but we'll get into that later. Furthermore, this video won't be a super technical review of these lenses. There are much better videos that achieve that goal out there. I'll link one down below by Jason Herman's, which is fantastic. Rather, it will be more about my experience while traveling with these two lenses the past month or two. Let's first talk about, obviously, what makes these lenses unique. The industry standard for full frame lenses has always been the 16-35, the 24-70, and the 70-200. That's the holy trinity. So on the wide end, you have the 16-35 and the standard zoom, the 24-70, but these offer a much more unique focal range, obviously from 20-40 for the Tamron and the 24-50mm on the Sony. So I would consider these two lenses to be strange or awkward focal lengths in respect to what has traditionally been normal. I'll break down the comparison between these two lenses into 5 categories. The first being the focal length and the versatility of the lenses. So obviously on the Tamron, it goes all the way out to the wide end to 20mm, which I think has been, in my experience, really great for number 1, video, number 2, vlogging if you're into vlogging, and number 3, landscape photography on the photography side. Conversely, on the Sony, it goes from 24-50 obviously, and some of the photographers on this platform, which I really look up to, have even coined this lens as one of the best they've ever used. And what I found in my experience is, obviously it doesn't go down to 20mm, which can be quite versatile on the videography side, like I said, as is on the Tamron. But what you gain out of more on the 50mm side, it's a little bit better for singling out subjects in street photography and travel photography. A little bit better for portraiture work as well, when you're on vacation or you're taking casual snaps of family and friends, let's say. But on the Sony E-mount system, there's another practical point that I'd like to state, is that when you're using these two lenses, practically speaking, you're getting 20mm to 60mm on the Tamron and 24mm to 70mm on the Sony by using the APS-C crop mode. So that will zoom at the very tight end. You can go from 40 to 60 with a 1.5 times crop, that's on the Tamron, and 50 to 70 roughly with a 1.5 times crop on the Sony lens. It's a very convenient feature of Sony camera bodies, except on the A7 IV or the A7C II, you do lose the megapixel count from the full use of the sensor of 33 megapixels down to roughly 15 megapixels. Factor number 2 I'd like to get into are the size, build, and functionality of these two lenses. If you've ever traveled for a period of time with a standard zoom, let's say a 24-70 and a full frame body like the A7 IV, after a week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks of traveling with that setup in hand, although versatile, it does get tiring. So the Tamron 20-40mm has a slight edge in this department, weighing less than the Sony by 70-80 grams, a very versatile travel option. Meanwhile, the Sony 24-50 is 70-80 grams heavier, but it comes packed with a little bit more features and a little bit more versatile arguably as well, since it goes up to 15mm on the tight end. Regardless, I think these two lenses, because of the portability and the size and weight of them, they balance out really nicely on regardless whatever body you use, whether it's the A6000 series on the APS-C lenses, the A7C series, especially I think on the larger bodies, the A7 bodies, they will balance out just fine. So the extra features on the Sony lens that I briefly mentioned in the last few points. As with consistent with the new modern Sony lenses and releases, the new features include the focus hold button, the AF/MF clickable switch, the aperture ring, the aperture declick function on and off. And these features could actually be quite handy for videographers. One last quirk that I want to also talk about with the Sony lens is that if you have any experience with any zooms, they usually on the default position start at the very wide end. But this is the opposite. When it's the zoom barrel is actually tucked in, it starts at 50mm. And then as you zoom, it zooms out and the barrel extends to 24mm. So that's just a quirk. That's a consideration of what type of photography and videography you do. But for street and travel photography, this could be quite a nice function for those shooters, because in street photography, 50mm arguably is the king of street photography focal lengths. And then in terms of build, both these lenses are built of plastic, but given the price difference, which I'll also get into in my other factors, the Tamron does feel a little bit light and hollow when you tap and use it, whereas the Sony, despite only being 70 grams or 80 grams heavier, does feel more solid built and doesn't feel as hollow in the hand. So it's really refreshing to see that the market is now turning to, at least on the Sony E-mount system, that they're producing lenses that are much more lightweight, but are still somewhat versatile for street and travel photography and videography that provide a lightweight package. Factor number 3, image quality and performance. So how do these lenses actually perform in real life situations? So both offer a constant f2.8 aperture as you zoom in and out, and that will provide generally good low light performance and capability for whatever you're shooting, unless if it's obviously pitch black. You will get some shallow depth of field depending on how close or far away your subject is and how close or far away the background is. Especially on the Sony, you'll get a little bit of a leg up in the shallow depth of field factor, as on the 50mm on a f2.8, everything else being equal, you'll get a little bit better bokeh on the Sony lens. When it comes to optical sharpness, the Sony is a better performer in this department. If you look at the example images, which I'll put on screen, the close-up details are sharper on the Sony. And finally, as a trade-off for the size and compact nature of these lenses, the manufacturers obviously had to do a trade-off for optical straightness. So on the very wide end, on the 20 for the Tamron and on the 24 for the Sony, without correction, there is quite a bit of distortion. But fret not, with the Lightroom profiles, these are easily correctable. And that also includes vignetting on the edges. So let's talk about autofocus and operability. On the Sony 24-50, it uses linear XD motors, making autofocus silent, quick, and accurate. I think we already know and have heard to the nth degree about how great Sony autofocus lenses and bodies are, and this is no different. On the other hand, the Tamron features what they call the VXD focusing system, and in my experience, it also is quite reliable and fast when paired with any Sony body. I think it will lose out to any native modern Sony lens by just a little bit, but not materially or significantly in my experience at least. And the other factor in terms of operability is that when you pair Sony glass on a native Sony body, you get focus breathing compensation function on the Sony body, which you won't get with third-party glass, let's say on the Tamron in this instance. So for videography, that's another consideration. So in my experience in the real world, when I'm traveling, I'm doing street photography, I don't find either of these two lenses to be slouches in the AF department. Thank you to Hohem for supporting today's video. If you like the B-roll of the video so far, that's because I filmed it with the Hohem iSteady MT2. The Hohem iSteady MT2 is a total game changer for solo filmmakers and content creators like myself. I'm on a road trip today and this is the perfect gimbal for traveling. I've got my full frame mirrorless video setup weighing over 1 kilo and the Hohem iSteady MT2 handles it without a problem. My favorite features so far have been the AI tracking. With just simple hand gestures, you can activate AI tracking. Make an OK sign to start tracking and show an open palm to stop it. The built-in AI tracker even doubles as an RGB light, perfect for those on-the-go shots in low-light environment. On top of that, it's got all the modern features you'd expect from a modern gimbal, but in a super lightweight, compact frame. The best part, it works with mirrorless action compact cameras and even your smartphone. Thank you again to Hohem for supporting this video. So the last factor I want to talk about to round all of this and tie all this up together is value, and also speak a little bit to Tamron's unique approach. The Tamron is a more budget-friendly option, coming in at about a couple $100 cheaper, generally speaking, to the Sony lens. So in terms of value, I think Tamron have employed a very unique strategy where they've differentiated themselves from providing the more traditional focal lengths, let's say the 16-35, the 24-70 and 70-200, whereas they've provided instead the 20-40, which is this lens, and for the standard zoom, they've provided the 28-75, and on the tight end, on the tele zoom, they've got the 70-180. So as a function of them being a little bit cheaper, usually a couple $100 cheaper compared to native Sony zoom lenses, the trade-off you get are these very strange, unique, awkward focal lengths. So it appears this strategy that Tamron has employed has allowed them to create lenses that are more lighter, a bit more compact, and obviously more budget friendly, but it sacrifices the traditional usability of zoom lenses. And that's where things could get interesting, because these trade-offs or these awkward focal lengths could work in your favor. They could present themselves as more as creative limitations and work in your favor perhaps. So all things considered, for these two lenses and everything that I've mentioned in this video, which one is best bang for your buck? I think it's very hard to beat, especially on the Sony E-mount system with the extreme amount of options for this mount. But in this case, the Tamron is the best bang for your buck, I would say. But on the flip side, if you're willing to fork out that few extra $100, this with the clickable aperture ring, the more dampened and smoother zoom operation, the AF/MF switch, the focus hold button, and the clickable and declickable function of the lens, all these quirks, it could be a better option for you. So I always like to hammer home the point, what type of shooter are you? Are you more into photo and or video? And if so, which styles of photo and video do you shoot? And lastly, on the value point, native glass, they usually tend to have a better resale value, especially if you're able to pick up any of these options secondhand. So that's the last thing to consider. Personally speaking, as a street and travel photography enthusiast, there are three things that I always consider when thinking about gear philosophy and purchases. Firstly is the size and weight. Is it lightweight, compact for travel? And secondly, performance. I don't want to sacrifice, despite the compact and lightweight nature of gear, that it sacrifices on performance. And number three is inspiration. Is it gear that makes me want to pick up the gear and actually go out and use it in all the free time that I have? If it doesn't inspire you to shoot, why is it even in your collection in the first place? So at the end of the day, it comes down to your needs and choices. So talking about the Tamron, who I think this is for, I think this is a very powerful tool for videographers, especially it goes down to the 20mm focal length, and it's a bit more versatile for landscape shooters as well. For those that don't mind forking out a few $100 more and you really value the extra quirks and functionalities of native Sony glass, this might be for you. Just some final thoughts. I think we're in a very interesting time where now starting to see these awkward focal lengths that start from 24 and end at 50, and that start at 20 and end at 40 become more the norm of the industry. And I think these lenses can prove that although the focal length is unconventional, they can be practical for some. And so for myself, I think I will in the end be keeping this guy. And it's for the reasons that I've stated. I think it's really enjoyable to have the little extra quirks and functionalities of this lens. And also, I think the reach of 50 is very, very practical and useful in street photography and travel photography. For those considering either one of these or good zoom length lenses, let me know which one would you pick. Or if you have experience in either or of these lenses, let me know which one you kept in the end, what your expenses have been. I'd love to start a discussion in the comments down below. Please like and subscribe if you found this helpful or insightful in any way. And I can't wait until I see you guys in the next one. Peace.